Today we're going to talk about fairies. No, not those fairies. We're talking about these fairies. These are the new fairies from the Fae Dominion Precon, and we're going to go see what we can do with them. Now on the screen is the three possible commanders that come with the Precon, so let's talk about them really quick. We have Tagwill, the Duke of Splendor, which gives us +1/+1 to all other fairies we control, and if another fairy dies, you get a card replacement. So this is actually pretty reasonable on a 3-mana body, and for this build, we're probably just going to keep her at the front. Alternatively, you could slot in one of these other guys here with Alayla Cunning Conqueror for 2 blue and a black that rewards you for casting spells on your opponent's turn by giving you Fairy Rogue tokens. And then if your fairies actually hit your opponent, you get to go to creature as well. Just remember, if you're hitting each opponent, one of each of their creatures is going to get the goat. It's just not one creature per combat. So that's a really good option as well. Or we could even go with the uncommon legend that comes from the main set but appears in the precon in Obira Dreaming Duelist for a blue and a black. You get a flash flyer that when another fairy enters battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Now, remember the Corpse Knight? That's the same card here, but it only triggers off of fairies. But this is so much better in this deck because it can reside in our command zone. It can be flashed into net you triggers off of the play stuff on opponent's turns cards like a Layla, and you can use it to dodge removal off of its flash as well. And it flies, which is something that the poor Corpse Knight wishes it could do, so it can evade and help us attack as well. Regardless of which of these commanders you choose, let's take a look and see what I would remove from the deck to make it better or at least more thematic with the World of Eldraine. So I want to further the goals of this deck without committing self-destruction when possible. In Nightmare and I'm making, I just don't like conditional wipes like this. It creates an odd tension. If you're holding a bunch of cards, you're not going to be able to keep your stuff alive and hit their stuff, but you're going to want to do that anyways. So then, unless you're like trying to hit just some big dinosaurs or big Eldrazi that your opponent might have, it's not that great. And then you're going to get this detrimental mindset of, okay, I'm going to try to maximize value and try to get my hand as low as I can so I get to keep my fairies and nuke everything else. But the problem is if you overextend your hand by just, free casting a bunch of stuff onto the battlefield and just trying to get it down so you can use this to maximum effect, you might accidentally walk right into an opponent's own board sweep and then you're screwed and you're still holding Nightmare on Making for no reason. Next is a series of generic stuff that I'm going to make room for more thematic cards in the deck. So we're going to take out Dig Through Time, Illusionist's Gambit, Wayfarer's Bauble, Hullbreaker Horror, and we're also going to remove a Swamp because there's just way too many lands for this as a starting land count in this pre-con. So while these are all good cards, I just want some more cards that look like they could be from Eldraine. And personally, I hate Hullbreaker Horror. Screw that card. All right, now that I've got that out of my system, the next set of cards are things that are going to get removed from the deck because they reference named characters or references from a faction, world, or character that's not from Eldraine. So we're going to remove Glenelender Archmage, Glenelender Liege, Halo Forager, Nimrus Una's Trickster, Una Queen of the Fae, Scion of Una, Dimir Aqueduct, and Dimir Signet. Now, yes, I know the Omen Paths are a thing now, and you could act like they could have arrived on Eldraine that way, but for our purposes in this pre-con change, I'm cutting all these cards out because I don't want them in here. I know I'm actually making the deck worse by cutting things like the Liege, the Scion of Una, and Una Queen of the Fae herself, but they're specific to the world of Lorwyn, and I want to keep the pre-cons that I'm changing here to cards that are either from Eldraine or could feasibly be seen on Eldraine with like just kind of a generic name. Now that I've cut out this big pile of cards, let's take a look and see what I'm going to add into this to make it a little bit better or at least a little bit more on the Eldraine theme. First up is Bitter Blossom. Now we have an actual Enchanted Tales printing of Bitter Blossom, so this is perfect for the deck, and I likely would have used it anyhow, because the art isn't really specific to Lorwyn, and there's nothing really like about the name that is specific to Lorwyn, but just look how good this new art is. This is absolute storybook feel, and I love it in this. Next is Fairy Slumber Party. Now, remember when you were a kid staying over at a friend's house for a slumber party? Yeah, this isn't that kind of sleepover, and your opponents are not going to have a good time. This isn't a Cyclonic Rift, but it's a very flavorful reset for our deck, bouncing all creatures but leaving behind 2 fairies per opponent as long as one of their creatures got caught sleeping at this particular slumber party. So in your regular game of Commander, you get to bounce everything, get 6 1/1 fairy tokens with flying, and that's a very good rate for what you're getting for 6 mana. Then the next card is going to have my fairies saying,
Nope.
no big nasty combos for you, no big Eldrazi Titans for you, I don't care, I don't want it messing with my game. Then we're going to add one of the new battle cards from March of the Machine in Invasion of Eldraine. Now, I find this one to be an interesting card. We get to mind rot an opponent and then hit it with some of our fairies to get another fairy on the board that can punish an opponent that isn't refilling their hand in the mid game. So we have some other discard in the deck already that is centered around the fairies. So this could put in some work for us at chipping away at an opponent's life total if we focus on one of them in particular. Then we're going to lean into some of this flash and instant speed stuff on our opponent's turns. As I mentioned with Alayla earlier, the secondary theme of this precon is casting off turn for gains. So we're going to include fairy tauntings and dream spoilers as they're perfect for that kind of thing because they trigger on your opponent's turns, so you can get extra triggers, extra bonus effects on the game. And then in the case of the ley line of anticipation that we're going to include, we're enabling those kind of shenanigans with any spell in our deck because it gives all of them flash, which also triggers those cards, but it also helps us avoid board wipes and removal as you're going to be able to flash these things in just before your own turn starts. The last group of cards I'm going to include here are mostly fairies just to fill up the deck and keep us on theme with the Eldraine stuff that I wanted to do here, and that is Fairy Dream Thief, Fairy Swarm, Likeness Looter, Thieving Sprite, Spell Stutter Sprite, Talion's Messenger, and Talion the Kindly Lord. So I'm going to make one final note on this, and that's with Talion the Kindly Lord. You do not need to run this card in the deck. Some people might find it overpowering because it's being considered for a CDH commander, but it's not be all end all for the deck. It's here mostly as a flavor nod, and he doesn't really affect fairies in any way, shape, or form. So if you don't want to run him, go ahead and slot something else in that you think feels good in the deck. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this little precon upgrade slide guide, whatever you want to call it. Thematic upgrades, let's go with that, of the Fade Dominion precon. And as always, thank you for watching. If you want to see more stuff like this, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.